Developed here and marketed.
What about, okay, well, here, I'll start with my opening gambit, okay?
Yeah.
You know, Kelly, there's 420,000 people living in Niagara.
Okay.
We have 136 politicians that are governing us, both municipal and regional. There's, relatively speaking, if in the city of Toronto, if they had the same representation per population, they would have about 400 politicians instead of 44. How can we streamline Niagara regional government?
Well, the answer to that, Stan, is do we need, first of all, 12 municipalities, 12 lower tier municipalities, and 1 upper tier municipality? Certainly, it makes it confusing to other companies looking to relocate when they don't know who to approach. Do they approach the town of Wainfleet, or do they approach Niagara region, or do they approach Niagara on the Lake? Where would be the best place for them to locate? To find out the facts and figures and to figure out where they can or can't locate. We need one economic development corporation handling the entire region, and we need one set of bylaws governing the entire region, and we need one set of politicians who are going to govern the entire region as a whole, rather than little spots here and there on the map.
Boy, that's refreshing to hear. But the local politicians and many of the local people believe that they'll lose their identity if we have one large metropolitan area. But you know, places like Peel, where you had Port Credit, Streetsville, Brampton, several other smaller communities have gone along with this, and it's worked extremely well for them. Do you think that would work in Niagara?
Absolutely, Stan. I mean, I live in St. Catharines, obviously, and St. Catharines has neighborhoods in the city. And I grew up in Martindale Heights. Friends of mine grew up in Port Dalhousie. Friends of mine grew up in Merritton. Friends of mine grew up in Western Hill, and then there's Glen Ridge. They're all different neighborhoods, but we're all part of the same city. And it would be the same thing if we had just one mega city, the city of Niagara. You'd have Welland, you'd have Niagara on the Lake, you'd have Niagara Falls, you'd have Wainfleet. They wouldn't lose their identity. They would just be a neighborhood, and that's what we should be all about anyways, is neighborhoods joining together to get a job done more efficiently under just one set of politicians. That way we cut government costs as well.
All right, Kelly, there was a couple of letters to the editor in the paper the other day where the people were talking about the election, and one gentleman said that he was voting for everybody who it didn't say re-elect on their sign.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've heard that too, Stan. And I mean, you hear, and not to criticize too strongly, I mean, because some of them I do know a couple of the incumbents, and they're good friends of mine, and I'm not suggesting they shouldn't be voted for, but they shouldn't be voted for just because they were here before, or just because of what their name is. They should be voted for because they have some plans, they got some good ideas. I'm tired of hearing people say, well, vote for me because I've done this, this, and this, and this in the community before. I belong to this club, and this club, and this club, and I've been an elected official now for the last 20 years. Well, if you have been an elected official for the last 20 years, then how come now all of a sudden you've got the good ideas? Why hadn't you instituted some of those good ideas during your last 20 years in office that you're so proud of? Stan, I mean, you got to have some ideas, some new ideas for the future, and you got to be able to stay awake at meetings.
Kelly, there's a huge amount of concern in Niagara about the costs of water. Now, water is something we can do something about. How would you economize or allow us not to have these increases?
Stan, let's look at the big picture. The infrastructure we have in place right now in Niagara that's taking care of our water was put there to service not only the citizens of Niagara, but also the businesses in Niagara, and those businesses being factories that we, of course, have since lost, like the John Deeres and the Horton Steel and General Motors plant that will soon be non-existent in St. Catharines. If we don't have a need for this much water because of all these plants that have relocated, surely we should be able to cut back on the usage and therefore cut back on the cost. Would that not be reasonable to assume?
It certainly would be reasonable to assume that by cutting back on the volume, we're going to have economies.
I would think so. But, of course, we also have to think of servicing the infrastructure that we have in place, and that would be the water lines running in the streets and to the homes. We also have to consider the upkeep on those as well.
But I would suggest that that would be a maintenance cost, not a capital cost.
Oh, exactly.
And this leads right into my next question. Maintenance is one thing, capital costs are something else. And the region is about to embark on a huge increase in our debt load. Now, with less industry, the seniors population growing, the retired population growing, and no new industry coming in, how do you propose to manage this extra debt load and not cost everybody a lot more money?
Well, we have to look at things, again, from the big picture, but we have to look at things in a long-term view. And that's why I'm proposing that we need to bring in more companies, more forward-thinking, future-thinking companies, so that we can have some growth in Niagara. The more growth we have in terms of families and young people, then the less the taxes will rise. They'll start to go down, hopefully, because there'll be more people to share the load.
Well, that's certainly a very good idea, and I'm sure that when you get to council, you will be bringing those ideas forward to all your fellow councilors. That brings me to another point. When a councilor asks a question of staff at the council meetings, often they will say, we'll have to have hire a consultant, and the consultant will prepare a report. In industry, and I'm sure you've seen this with your industrial background, people are hired because they know how to do things like that. They don't constantly have to refer to somebody else. Do you believe that the number of consultants that are hired and the number of reports that are presented could in any way be reduced and in that way be more economical for the operation of the region?
You know what, Stan? I'm not going to second guess councilors up until this point in time, because I wasn't there when it was happening. But surely consultants are going to be required from time to time. But shouldn't our own staff be hired based on their abilities? And shouldn't those abilities be based on what we as councilors feel need to be done? So therefore, I think that it's important that we make sure that our staff actually know how to do these things. So the best thing that you, the voter, can do on October 25th is, first of all, to remember to go to the polls and vote. But second of all, vote for me